Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday, March 18th, 2024. Time for another show, despite the fact that I think I have a fairly obvious cold. I don't think Greg was capable of transmitting this to me via the internet. But as you know, Greg was out sick last week. Although it's not the same virus, I got a completely different one, as it turns out. And so, I don't know, we'll be struggling through it today. It'll sound a little bit funny. We'll want to use this episode for reruns, perhaps. I should make a little note about that. Although, you know, next year I could have a cold about this part too. So, all right, everything seems okay. The voice doesn't hurt. So we're in good shape. I have a cup of tea here today, but I was in a rush to make it, so I didn't get to make any of my fine, delicious new, either the Hawaiian teas, although I suppose I could have made that one in a rush. But I just reached for the nearest thing, my ritualistic patriot tea. Would have taken a little bit too long to get this prepared. So doing my best to get through it. And Greg is back. He's got a whole raft of stories lined up. I don't know how he sounds after his brief battle with his own virus, but there's plenty to catch up on and plenty to strain the voiceover if necessary. So lots to do. Not that I did a whole great deal of it over the weekend. I was a little bit out of it, as you can imagine. And of course, it was St. Patrick's Day weekend. So, you know, meh. Well, I didn't get to any of the serious St. Patrick's Day revelry, though I did stop by a nearby block party that I don't think the timing was wrong for me to have picked it up there. I hope I didn't carry it there and have no idea that I was sick at the time, but the timing for that might be right. So I don't know. We'll have to check in on that. So the usual St. Patrick's Day revelry I didn't get a chance to see anywhere, even though I was on a college campus yesterday, but it was come back from spring break day, so all the parents were around, so everyone was on their, I don't know if it was necessarily their best behavior, but I don't think it was St. Patrick's Day green beer drinking behavior, at least not until the evening. So, what's going on? I don't know. I guess there are still royals missing, although Kate Middleton showed up somewhere, apparently, allegedly in a photograph, but who knows these days with photographs at some country store somewhere, but you don't care about that. I don't care about that. We won't be covering that. The things we will be covering, Greg has all lined up. Of course, the former guy, now known as the fascist guy, used the weekend to rally his fascist troops, and I guess essentially I don't know. He's just testing messages. How far can I go before the American media calls me out for what I am? And the answer is they're never going to do it. They need a normal race, and they're going to do everything they can to make it look like a normal race, even when a candidate stands and says, if I don't get elected, if they elect the other guy, if I don't get elected, there's going to be a bloodbath in this country. Now, they're working hard to try to put some spin on it. He was talking about a bloodbath, in a certain context, like to take you all the way back to Newt Gingrich. He meant HCFA. He meant the Healthcare Financing Agency. There'll be a bloodbath there. You remember that one? You have to be pretty old to remember that one. That was when Newt Gingrich was accused of saying that he wanted Medicare. Was it Medicare? To wither on the vine. That is to say, if Republicans essentially defunded it. Medicare, Medicaid, I don't even remember anymore. Who runs HCFA? Maybe Greg remembers. Anyway, and he was saying, no, I don't mean that program. I just meant some bureaucratic agency that people probably don't know anything about. That's the one I meant. That should wither on the vine. Then it would take that other program with it, but, you know. So anyway, I guess the spin is supposed to be, well, the bloodbath will be over something else completely different that I was kind of sort of talking about at the same time. And I don't know. But he also used the occasion to relaunch his plans to deport every undocumented immigrant, all 11 million of them, and to do it really quickly and to make no mistakes, by the way, and deport no one who is actually a citizen. Whether they just happen to look like they're from another country, or they just don't like them, or they wanted to take their Tesla, or whatever it is. I guess now Everyone will be subject to deportation, and we can't call that out as abnormal or weird. And, just so many varying things that he did over the weekend and declared were going to be, that was going to be the heart of the race. And, what can you do? Major newspapers just not geared for discussing that sort of thing. All right. Many other things are not geared for discussing as well. But luckily we have others that we can rely on to discuss them for us, like Marcy Wheeler and, of course, Greg Dworkin, who, all right, let's answer the phone. We might as well get the relief in here right away, don't you think? Good morning, Greg. How are you feeling today?
Fairly okay.
Okay. Well, between the two of us, we can do a fairly okay show, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how long
One
my
at a
voice
time.
lasts.
Okay.
But, it was a pretty interesting weekend. I have to say, they were slow, but the media stepped up, and that bloodbath comment was absolutely everywhere.
Yes, so
you can't
no
say it
lack
wasn't
of
covered.
reporting. That's true. I mean, they do what they can do, providing context, but it was in every headline.
Yes.
That was good.
It was in every absolute single headline, and as a matter of fact, the pundit roundup I have for this morning was parsing what it means to say bloodbath. And to me, this is a fairly straightforward and simple thing. If you're explaining, you're losing.
Okay. Yes. Right.
And Trump World is explaining that bloodbath meant something else, and this is a huge win for us because look how the media distorted everything, except they didn't.
Well,
and everyone's talking about it, and that doesn't help him because all it does is it reminds everybody of January 6th.
Oh, yeah, the bloodbath.
Yes, it reminds his followers. He always speaks to
them.
In
a good way.
But there's more of us than there are more of him, and that's why he lost in 2020. And then there was January 6th, so we haven't even seen that effect in the Trump election yet. So, no, I'm not buying that this is all good news for him. It's actually bad news for him.
Well, I should hope so. I mean, he
said other things too.
All the time his way. Anyway, yeah, okay, that's true.
In that same lecture, in that same seminar that he gave.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm going to murder everybody.
When he was presenting his research, he, and again, you have to step back and realize that Trump is completely incoherent. And so when he throws lines in that don't belong in the middle of a sentence, his defenders can say, well, look, he didn't really mean that. Look at the context. Look what he said right before and look at the words he said right after.
Person, man,
and
woman,
so
camera.
Therefore, right. And so, stand back and stand by doesn't mean what you think it means.
Right.
Except after January 6th, we know what it means. And so the whole context
he keeps doing
is that he started his seminar with a homage, with a festschrift to the January 6th hostages playing their national anthem thing.
What is it? I don't know. I did see
where
that
the hostages sang the national anthem, and he said they're all hostages, and we have to defend them, and I'll pardon them all. That's the context where he used the term bloodbath.
Well, that was the one with the actual blood, I thought.
Yeah. So where's that? So New York Times. Trump says some migrants are not people. He also said that.
Oh, yes, right. That was the other
that
big
was
one
also
from the weekend.
And predicts a bloodbath if he loses. In a caustic and discursive speech in Ohio, former President Donald J. Trump once again doubled down on a doomsday vision of the United States.
The discursive is guaranteed to make sure that people outside of New York don't listen.
Right. The dark view resurfaced throughout his speech, so they covered the speech. Brian Schatz, in Congress said, headline writers, don't outsmart yourself. Just do Trump promises bloodbath if he doesn't win election. That's what he said.
Well, it's easy. Your work's done. Get to go home early.
Nicholas Grossman. Trump has encouraged political violence since he entered electoral politics in 2015. He took steps toward illegal force in office, incited a violent mob attack on the U.S. Capitol. The precise intent behind his single word, so he uses bloodbath as a single word as opposed to the New York Times, which uses two words to say bloodbath. The precise intent behind a single word in one of his rambling speeches is much less important. And that's true. It's the whole context of the speech.
Fair
Washington
enough.
Post leads with Trump says undocumented immigrants are not people.
Yes.
And he also warned of a bloodbath, and they use a single word.
Okay. Well, it's important to know the AP style on that.
But they included another line that he said, which ought to be getting headlines everywhere as well.
Then there's only one headline you can put on it.
we're going to put 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line in Mexico, and you're not going to be able to sell those guys if I get elected.
Okay.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole something.
And then you also won't be able
That's
to sell
going to be
it
the
because
least
it'll
of
overthrow
it.
the government.
Those words, that's going to be the least of it.
Oh,
There's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, and he meant country. That's going to be the least of it. You want context? There's your context.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. So no, he wasn't talking about economics. It's just that he started talking about cars, segued into this because he's incoherent, and so it makes it very difficult for the wordsmiths, the reporters who live by writing words that mean stuff, to make sense out of the incoherency. You see this all the time with Trump rallies. If you read transcripts,
they don't
it
make
sounds
sense
like
as
he
transcripts.
said something and meant it, and it was done in a linear fashion, and you could put it together, and there's meaning.
You think?
If you listen to it, it's like he's rambling all over the place. Why did you clean this up?
Oh, I see. Yeah, if you clean up the transcript, yes. If you get a raw transcript where he include the ums and ahs, and
you get that,
twists
and you
turns,
get an idea of
really
what's going
something.
on here.
Yeah.
But when you read the wordsmith versions of it,
Yes.
it's all sanitized. It's all bowdlerized.
Yeah. Well, they've been cleaning them up for a long time, but there's only so much you could do to these words. He did say those things, and people want to avoid blood in general, and bathing in blood probably tops the
given
blood
January
avoidance
6th and
list.
you're a politician and your supporters and who they are, you really want to avoid that. I mean, it's pretty clear. Jen Psaki provides the full context of Trump's bloodbath remark, tweets Sarah Reese Jones.
Oh.
We didn't miss the full context. This was not some meandering off-message comment. This is his message.
Yeah.
Trump says there'll be a bloodbath if he loses.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, it's just straightforward.
Yeah.
Here's one from George Conway, which I thought was pretty insightful. That's SIGHT, not
Okay. Oh, yeah.
INCIT.
That's what happened
Trump.
at the...
Conway is insight. So there's some commentary here saying we should disregard Trump's bloodbath remarks last night because he was talking about potential harms to the auto industry. It's misguided.
Auto industry bloodbath. Sure.
Yeah, Trump may well have been referring to a bloodbath in that industry. He's sufficiently incoherent that, as is often the case, it's hard to tell one way or the other what he meant. I'm willing to assume for the sake of argument, okay, he's referring to cars. It makes no difference. It makes no difference to his malicious intent, the danger he and his rhetoric poses. What matters is he consistently uses apocalyptic and violent language and in an indiscriminate fashion as a result of his psychopathology and correlative authoritarian tendencies, and because he's just plain evil. It's a classic trait. It's dangerous all around, and it doesn't matter what he's specifically referring to. He's a psychopath.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I'll go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a sufficient explanation. All right, an auto industry bloodbath. Well, we don't want that either.
Sure, that's what you meant. Juliet Kayam, who's a national security person, says, the pushback on this bloodbath quote did compel me to watch again. He was clear. To read it otherwise would require me to ignore his words in nearly a decade of similar incitement, as if this came out of nowhere, as if he didn't already promote violence as a campaign strategy.
Yes.
So there's that.
I said mud bath.
Yeah, right.
No. Okay. Well, I mean, he does have that history, and difficult to ignore. And I love when they ask him, and he's like, "No, I meant that. I meant murder."
Yeah. Oh. No, that's clear. Well, like Sean Hannity talking about the documents. Well, you didn't really mean keep those. No, I meant them. They're mine.
Yeah. He loves to confess to that.
Yeah.
All right.
So he was confessing about a lot of things.
Hand-wringing
other
time.
good ones. This is Ivan Moore. I'm sorry, it looks like a normal day, but we got Trumpers getting all nuanced and talking about context. WTF.
New for them, yeah.
What did they pop through a wormhole or something? They'll be drinking oat milk lattes next. I think he meant hemp milk, but
Yeah, maybe.
Same idea.
You get it. Yes.
Will
I saw
Bush,
banana
the
milk.
great bloodbath controversy. I mean, the point is everybody's talking about it. There's no way you could make the case, well, media didn't cover it. They covered it. Everybody's covering it.
They did. You could ask questions about the angles that they of approach they took, but it's.
I mean,
we're always saying
wasn't
people
fascist
read the
said
headlines
bad
and nothing
stuff,
else,
which is what it should have been.
right?
But they covered it.
Yes, and they put it in the headlines, and it was important. And if anything, if anybody's complaining about it being unfairly slanted, it's mostly the Trumpers saying, you didn't put in there that he meant the auto industry, because he didn't.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, okay.
You said clip when you meant magazine.
Right. Well, at any rate, it was there. It was in the headlines. That's a pretty good step forward. I mean, there's lots more. There's lots more context of the reason he says is the number of times he's threatened bloodbaths, the number of times he's followed up those threats with blood. That's it's a dangerous thing, and it's dawning on even some media types, I guess.
Right.
All right.
Anyway, fair warning, I'm not sure my voice is going to last longer than the first half hour, but I'll do my best.
All right. Well, that is
so
fair.
I don't want to talk about
I don't know either.
His bloodbath stuff so much.
Anymore. Ever again. All right.
Ever again, except we'll have to because he says it every time. Because he's just going to repeat it the next time and say, all you people who said it was out of context, okay, this time he put it in context for you.
Whoops. All right. Well,
right,
follow
you happy?
Up on Wednesday.
Right. But no, I want to talk about New Jersey.
Everybody does.
Everybody wants to talk about it. You know why?
No.
Because Fiorello LaGuardia is running.
But
also known as Andy Kim.
You
see, what happened is that Robert Menendez,
yes.
who is bringing new meaning to the word corrupt,
congratulations.
He's not only indicted, but he's superseding indictment. That's like double secret probation.
Yes.
Right? I mean, he keeps gold bars in his house, that Robert Menendez.
I do.
So he needs to be replaced on the Democratic ticket. Menendez may run as an independent, which is great because he may get 4% or 3% or 2%. I don't know. But not much more than that. So he needs to be replaced on the ticket. Now, the governor, Phil Murphy, a Democrat, wants his wife to become the next senator.
Yes.
Right, so
Tammy to say about that.
Murphy.
Yeah.
Who I like to call Tammany Hall Murphy, has got the support of the South Jersey machine, George Norcross's political machine.
All right.
And Fiorello, Andy Kim, is running against Tammany Hall Murphy. And so there's something really weird about New Jersey politics and ballots you need to know about. And that's what I thought we'd explore because I wasn't totally familiar with it. I knew the concept, but I wasn't familiar with the exact mechanics. But let's paint the picture for you. Fairleigh Dickinson University, Dan Cassino's a good pollster, good political scientist, and his poll finds Andy Kim, as a big lead over Tammy Murphy in the New Jersey Senate primary. So if you're just going by popularity, Andy Kim, who is a centrist, is leading
from Central Jersey.
Tammy Murphy, who's also basically a centrist. Phil Murphy is not a super conservative politician.
No, and
so they're
very
both.
Nice.
They don't have that much difference in terms of ideology or policy. However, Andy Kim is a reformer and just basically an overall good guy. Andy Kim, you may recall, is the one who, after the January 6th riot, spent time cleaning up the floor and sweeping.
Yes, he's also very nice.
He's a nice, good guy.
Yeah.
And Tammy Murphy is not really a politician, doesn't belong on the ticket, and the machine is pushing her, and I don't know why, but they are. So Andy Kim got associated with good government, and that's why I call him Fiorello. And Tammy Murphy is associated with the machine, and that's why I call her Tammany Murphy. And so, it's pretty clear that the people in New Jersey prefer Kim. However, there's something in New Jersey called, and this is capitalized, might as well be scare quotes, but it's capitalized, called the line.
The line.
It's the county line. What happens in New Jersey is that each individual county will endorse a set of candidates. And when they do so, and I sent you a picture of it, just you're familiar with it, but a lot of people aren't.
Well, I'll look at the
in New
picture
Jersey, if you are endorsed by the county, your county ballot in the first column will have everybody who the county endorsed.
Yes.
Joe Biden and, whoever, Cory Booker and then some locals, but there's a whole unbroken line of county line nominees in the first column.
Yeah.
The second column, let's say it's a Democratic primary, may be completely blank, randomly.
Yes,
sort of. And the third column may include whoever's running against the party line people, and the fourth column and the fifth column. And it's distributed in a completely random way. So you have a solid line of people in the first column, and then nothing in the second column, and then in the third column maybe you have some local dog catcher who's running, and then in the fourth column you have whoever's running against Tammy Murphy. And it's just weird, and it gives a distinct advantage to whoever the county endorses. That's where machine politics comes in.
Yes, okay.
So the county machine endorses Tammy Murphy. She's in the first column, and Kim is somewhere out there in the rest of the ballot. You have to go find him.
Yeah. They put his name in bold.
That's what it means to have the county line or the line.
Yes.
So for Kim to run against the line is difficult. And yet, southern New Jersey is where the machine is basically located. This is New Jersey Globe over the weekend. Andy Kim trounces Tammy Murphy at Atlantic County Convention.
Oh.
Kim gets an important South Jersey line despite Norcross's support for Murphy. Mm-hmm. So Kim is bucking the system. He's fighting the county line idea by going to the individual county conventions and trying to win these conventions.
Yes.
So that he's the one that gets the county line. But he doesn't like the whole county line system.
I can understand that.
So he's suing the state.
That I am less enthusiastic about, but I get the idea.
And this weekend, in fact, on St. Patrick's Day, there's this story. New Jersey Attorney General says organization lines are unconstitutional.
What?
The day before a hearing, the Attorney General tells a federal judge his office won't intervene in Kim's lawsuit to abolish these lines.
All right.
The Attorney General in New Jersey will not stand on the side of New Jersey against Kim.
Yes.
Because he thinks the whole thing is like corrupt. Which it is.
Sort of is. I mean, and that's a very fine line, but he's kind of right. The Attorney General has no interest. Like, these are party organization decisions, really, and they're imposed on New Jersey government because those are the parties that run New Jersy, Democrat or Republican.
Wait, there's even more.
Yeah.
So as Kim starts to build up momentum, because he's won a couple of other county,
by the way,
conventions,
good
which
for
you didn't
him
expect
for reading
him
the rule book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
great.
This happened.
All right.
Jersey City Mayor Fulop switches his support from Murphy to Kim in U.S. Senate race. Jersey City mayors say he moved too quickly. Kim has proven he's the better candidate. He rescinds his endorsement of Tammy Murphy, urges her to drop out of the race, and backs Andy Kim.
All right. That's Hudson County. That's north.
But it's a different county. But, all of these
that's
counties.
Good. So there's a major population center. Huge.
Yeah. All of these counties are shifting to Kim, which is going to break the back of the whole county line system. In theory.
What do you know? Yeah. Well,
and there's various and sundry ways the counties have their conventions. Some are secret ballots, some are public ballots, some are, I decided I'm going to add 19 delegates to make sure my candidate gets more than yours. It's just really old-fashioned Tammany Hall politics. And it's really interesting to watch Andy Kim fight against them and win, which is why I labeled him Fiorello.
Well, it is an interesting story. Congratulations to Andy Kim for reading and understanding the rule book and
about you, even though you haven't won yet.
And then it's very interesting.
The name's LaGuardia.
I will say that the reason the county line tends to survive is Andy Kim will have read the rule book, figured out that if he goes to the conventions and follows their rules, he has a decent shot at getting the county line. Then he may not get it in all counties. He gets enough to win, and then they say, so when re-election time comes around, you want to use the county line system, sort of guarantee yourself the first spot on the ballot? That line's not so bad now.
But he's suing. He's going to get rid of it. It does stink the high of heaven.
It's
and
not
at
great.
the same time, it's very reminiscent of 2008. Hillary Clinton is locking up these. Yeah, but Obama is like getting delegates at caucuses quietly because those are the rules. And he read the rule book.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he's going to have more delegates. How do you like them apples?
That's pretty good.
Well, let's get rid of caucuses.
I haven't voted in New Jersey in a long, long time, but so I don't know what it's like now. But it reminds me, these weird, expansive ballots with the county line, etc. One, I don't know that I ever knew what the hell exactly was going on. I just noticed that they had done this. But the voting machines, they have, when I last voted in New Jersey, they had the old school go in the booth, draw the curtain.
Yeah, like in New York.
Yeah.
And then you have levers, and you could do a lever that would do the whole Democratic line, except they were horizontal, not vertical.
Yeah. So they had that, but the other thing is if you've been in one of those machines, you always maybe wondered, especially if you went in for a race where there weren't that many candidates, and you say, there are like hundreds of levers in here. This enormous grid. And that's because you had to have, if there are.
I feel like a 1950s phone operator at the Waldman Astoria.
Yeah, oh my God, it was crazy. And then trying to find your guy, if they're not on the line, searching all the way out in these levers, and oh man. And yeah, that's where it really makes a big difference. I don't know whether the electronic voting machines are prevalent there now, or they don't have it, or who knows. But it's very intimidating, and you always wondered, why do they have to have so many levers and so many rows?
Well, I got an article about that, so I want to talk about that after the break a little bit, because it covers mail-in ballots, too.
Okay. Yeah, well, all right. I mean, they always used to have to send the sample ballots. That's another thing. Moving out of New Jersey, when I would get a sample ballot here in Virginia, I say, why do they need to mail this to me? This is easy. The sample ballots in New Jersey were quadruple, quintuple, it folded 10 times and would open up like a map. It was crazy.
Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on. We're going to give it the old college try. That is to say, we're too old for college, but we're going to try anyway. See how long the voice lasts. By the way, Greg, I have that ballot still open. Do you still have it? You got it on your screen. Take a look and take notice of in all of this. There's different lines, right? And everybody's got opponents, and it's the Democratic primary. Who doesn't have a primary opponent on here? What are they running for? Can you see that?
This is the county clerk.
Yeah. Who designs these ballots? Who's responsible for placing everybody on these things and tallying everything up? It's the county clerk.
The county clerk. And on this ballot, this particular ballot happens to be a Democratic mail-in ballot from Monmouth County.
In 2020.
And it says for county clerk, vote for one, and there's only one.
Right. Now, that's always the instruction. Well, not always, but vote for one. The one below it is the Board of Freeholders, the county governing board, and there are 4 candidates shown, and it says vote for 2.
Yeah.
But, everywhere else you're supposed to vote for 1, and there's only one person running for county clerk. And I guess that's one of the interesting commentaries on the power of the county clerk there. It's not entirely up to the clerk whether you'll be separated on lines. That has to do with the internal politics. But where's your line going to be?
But, if you're not on the county line, whether you're in the second column next to it or the third or the fourth or the fifth, and there are 5. Yeah. Is completely and totally random. There is no rhyme or reason to it. It's not alphabetical. It's not by how many votes it's just like it's weird. I mean, it may have something to do with who is purposefully and openly aligning themselves with one another. You'll hear the second line for another candidate for Senate, Lawrence Ham, running against Cory Booker. This is 2020. And then a couple of other people running for freeholder. I don't know whether that means that Ham is aligned with these two. Take the U.S. House, for example. Stephanie Schmidt was running and got the county line. Yeah. Then the next one is blank. Then the next one is blank. And then you see Christine Conforti. Yeah. Why is that? So this is from an article written by New Jersey Policy Perspective. And they say, Figure 1, which is what we're talking about here, shows a 2020 New Jersey Democratic primary ballot from Monmouth County. The 7 county line candidates are in column 1, and the other 6 candidates are scattered across the other 4 columns, mostly empty. There's no obvious logic as to why each of the non-endorsed candidates is in a particular column. Column 2 includes a candidate for the U.S. Senate and 2 candidates for county freeholder. Yeah. Column 3 includes a candidate for president and his delegates. Column 4 and 5 have the House of Representatives. So it's not like you have all of the national candidates in one column and the locals, and it's just totally random. Well, yeah, sort of. I think there's something behind it in terms of running as allies and as a slate, although it's not always immediate. It's not necessarily. Well, as they say, there's no obvious logic to it. Yes. There may be some logic to it that's hidden and esoteric. Yeah, yeah. But there's no obvious logic to it. Right. Yeah, well, that's the issue with it. Christine Conforti. So this ballot design encourages voters to pick the candidates on the county line because they're easy to find, they're visually distinct. They're further advantaged by the placement of better-known candidates like the president. So if you're voting for Joe Biden, obviously these are the people he's endorsing, right? Because they're all on the same line. Yeah. Except no, but that's what it looks like. But also, yes. So designing primary ballots in this way violates important rules of good ballot design, most critically, spreading candidates across multiple columns or rows and placing extra columns or rows between them makes it much harder for voters to determine which candidates are running for each office, and this results in voters not realizing some positions are contested, or conversely, disqualifying their vote by mistakenly voting for too many candidates for a given position. So they talk about the fact that there's some research to show that it's a big deal and it matters for elections, and that's why Andy Kim, as a reformer running against county line politics, makes him a darling of the liberal progressives, even though he's a centrist, because the alternative is Tammy Murphy, who is clearly a creature of machine politics, even though Kim and Murphy probably, if they were in Congress at the same time, would vote like 100% the same. Yeah. They're not different in regard to ideology. So this isn't always about ideology. This is about personality, about Andy Kim being a clean gene kind of guy, and the fact that Tammy Murphy is the exact opposite. Yeah, well, it's. I think it's fascinating. It really was, and this is a great example. I hope everybody will. Well, where did you find it? Did you have a link to where you found the thing so we can send people to go see it? Oh, okay. I just have the picture, and I thought, all right, well, good. I'll put the link in there. It says right above the picture. It says, "Does the county line matter?" An analysis in New Jersey's 2020 ballot. That's where it's from. Okay. All right. I have the picture up front. I've clicked on it, and now there we go. Okay, it's right. I clicked on it to enlarge it so I could actually read it, and it blanks everything else out. There's nothing else exists in the world for me but the New Jersey ballot. Wow. So, well, I remember those very well. Yeah. Well, now I know what the hell they were doing. I thought I'd just bring up this blast from the past and entertain you with the idea that the things that you remember, that's not the way they do it anymore.
All right, and it shouldn't be any more going forward if Andy Kim wins his lawsuit, which, yeah, I mean, it's a good lawsuit and everything. It never really looks great to be suing the state while you're running to represent it, but, you know, people...
Well, if you're a reformer,
mostly don't care. Yeah, and also, I mean, yeah, most people will, if they'll listen for 5 seconds, why are you suing the state? It's that stupid ballot thing we have. Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, that is stupid. Sure, go ahead. Hope you win. We just get one of those things with 2 boxes on it. Check one. But, well, you get a lot of choices in this primary. A lot of people running. There was a lot of, maybe, diversity.
Right. So I'm going to end here
all right.
by quoting Mike Madrid, who is a reformist political hack.
Oh, reformist. Okay.
Who wrote, look, if you had told me 4 years ago that Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, Mike Pence, Mitt Romney, Chris Christie, and Adam Kinzinger wouldn't be supporting the Republican nominee for president, I never would have believed you.
I'm still not sure I believe you.
But it's true. Mike Pence over the weekend says, I will not vote for Donald Trump. Paving the way for Nikki Haley to say the same thing, by the way. I'm not sure she will, but Pence said it. Nobody thought Pence was going to say it. My journalist friend, Mr. Walter Shapiro, who has covered 11 presidential campaigns and has a wry sense of humor. In fact, I think he was a stand-up comic at one point, said, really? You know, Mike Pence would be the perfect candidate for no labels. They were looking for a Republican.
No votes. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you know what? Given my high opinion of Joe Lieberman, it'd be fine with me if Mike Pence was the candidate for no labels. And since they wanted a Republican and a Democrat as president, vice president candidate on that ticket, I think they should run with Mike Pence and Bob Menendez.
Hey, he's available.
He's available, and he's running as an independent, he says. And so why not run on the no labels ticket? And I think that ticket would attract just enough votes to make me not pay any attention to them whatsoever.
Yeah. They'll get their own line.
Yeah.
So... You know, it's a thing. All right. Well,
it's not first like the county line, but it's their own line.
Right. Well, you know, all you really want is a line. And they do print your name in bold capital letters in the last name. So you can find people. It's just you have to look all the way over to your right, which is...
Right. Yeah. A reminder, as these primaries go on, and you see a lot of stupid things written about the primaries, you know, here's just one example. You can find this everywhere. The 2 candidates nobody wanted are running against each other. Most idiotic thing you could ever write. The reason the 2 candidates are running against each other is everybody wanted them.
Yeah, you didn't like them yourself, but then you need to get on the same page with your neighbors. If you don't want to, you don't want to.
And in those primaries, Joe Biden actually gets more of the Democratic Party than Trump gets of the Republican Party. As Simon Rosenberg points out, Trump's repeatedly underperformed public polling in the early states. A big chunk of the GOP, 20 to 30%, has deep reservations about backing Trump. A remarkable number have said they're even open to voting for Biden. And so then you get, oh, well, that doesn't mean anything because in a general election, we don't know what it means. Until the general election comes, you know, you're very dismissive because you already have your own idea of what you think the story is and the narrative. But it's pretty remarkable for Mike Pence to do that. It's pretty remarkable for 30% of the Republicans who tend to fall in line not voting for Trump. All of it's pretty remarkable. What does it mean? We'll see. But Rosenberg goes on to say, you know, he thinks something after Dobbs broke in the Republican Party, and they're just not the same. They don't have any money. They're spending all of the money sucking out the Republican National Committee to fund Trump's legal stuff. That means down ballot money isn't going to be there this year. Biden has a huge fundraising advantage, which is only going to get bigger now that things are starting to heat up. And so, you know, there's a lot going on under the surface, and it's very difficult to put the whole picture together and say, oh, this is what it means. There's no question Biden is not leading in the polls right now. It's also no question that there's March. So my advice over the weekend to Twitter followers were, look, if you think Biden can't lose, look at the polls.
I don't know.
And if you think Biden can't win, stop looking at the polls. They're not going to help you. And if you can't balance that, go talk about it with your shrink.
I guess. It's pretty straightforward what to do with the polls. If
Don't pay
then
that much
that.
attention to them. It's
Okay.
March.
Yeah, this is always good advice at this point. All right. I'm happy to ignore them entirely.
Yeah. So
Just let you tell me.
Anyway, with that, I'll try to rest my voice, and hopefully
do
I'll
that.
have a voice on Wednesday, and we'll see what happens.
Sure.
And we got 45 minutes in. Well,
Yeah,
sort of,
that's pretty good
almost
quality.
Stretching it.
Right. Well, we'll just keep stretching it for a little longer.
Yeah. Look, I could say goodbye for 3 minutes, and then we'll be there.
Okay.
But in any case, I'll see you on Wednesday.
All right. Very good. We'll be looking forward to it. I'm going to keep examining this ballot. This is really fascinating and reminiscent of a lot of weird early voting experiences. It's transparent in a way.
Take care. Have some tea.
Will do.
And then later on in the day, you can have that wonderful Hawaiian coffee.
Yes, that comes next. Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Very good. Thanks. You too. So I ask you, the rest of you voting, I don't know. I don't think this is the way they present. I confess to not having paid a tremendous amount of attention, but I just think that they don't put this amount of information on the ballot in Virginia, where I've been voting for a very long time. But I always did find it rather fascinating that the New Jersey ballots, for all of their faults and their, the manipulative use of the lines, etc., they're also extremely transparent when it comes to presidential elections. What you'll see in this one, because it's a primary ballot, is you will see that they list, when you're casting your ballot under the name of, for Biden or Sanders for president, for instance. Again, this is the July 7th, 2020 president, general Democratic primary election. They list who you're actually voting for, which is to say, I'm voting to send the following New Jersey individuals to the Democratic National Convention as delegates pledged to either Biden or Sanders. And I think that's pretty rare. And then in the general election, they would print and, it was made clear to anyone who actually read that print, and it's fine print. They bold and capitalize the names of the candidates, and that's who you think you're voting for. But in New Jersey, they would tell you, these are the names of the people that you are voting to elect as electors in the Electoral College, which makes it all the more difficult, theoretically, I guess, to do things like forge Electoral College votes. I mean, they could just as easily have forged Electoral College votes from New Jersey. No one's really paying attention, but I don't think that they do that in all the states. Put the names of the people you're actually casting your ballot for. In practical terms, it doesn't do anybody any good, and it doesn't make up for the manipulative nature of the county line thing necessarily, but I think it's an important feature and a good one at that. So, it doesn't influence any votes one way or another, but I like that they put, this is what's really happening here. Don't hide the ball. Go ahead and tell everybody what they're going to do. Okay. Well, at any rate, that seems like an interesting line of inquiry and a good reminder of how things work in some of the weirder states out there. All right. So, about the fascist guy and what he did for the weekend and other things that would be important to read into the record here. I did find that, I saw something this morning that I saw Marcy Wheeler commenting on from two different angles. I thought this was interesting. This is a Josh Dawsey article in the Washington Post. On top of all of the rhetorical nonsense from Trump this weekend, this headline: Trump is eyeing Paul Manafort for a 2024 campaign role. That's right, federal convict Paul Manafort, whom he pardoned so that he would then be in place, I guess, to help him run his 2024 campaign, and also so that he wouldn't be tempted to flip and testify against him at his own criminal trial. The former campaign manager, the subheader here reads, was pardoned by Trump for bank and tax fraud convictions and accusations that he hid millions that he made consulting for pro-Russian Ukrainian politicians. Now, this first came to my attention this morning as I saw Marcy mentioning this and calling out something from the article, and then adding some commentary of her own, but basically calling out the way that, what did she was on Blue Sky this morning saying, here's how Josh Dawsey, in a report that Trump will hire Paul Manafort again, describes a meeting at which Manafort talked about how to get paid millions, how to carve up Ukraine, and how he planned to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And there is a clip from it. And I couldn't tell whether she was saying this is a good description of it or a poor description of it, but as it turns out, she offers what she thinks would have been a better description in a couple of articles. But let's read what Josh Dawsey has to say here, just so that we're up to speed on the news. Former President Donald Trump is expected to enlist Paul Manafort. And remember, Paul Manafort, last time he ran Trump's campaign, insisted, I'm not taking a salary. So maybe it is kind of like enlisting. But he wasn't taking a salary because he was getting paid by the Russian oligarchs who were paying him to funnel information to them. And Donald Trump hired him because he said, I can work a side deal where you don't have to pay me any of your money. Some Russians will pay me instead. And everybody wins, except for the fact that everybody in a normal situation goes to jail. But then again, if you do win, then you can pardon me. So that worked out pretty well. All right, so former President Donald Trump is expected to enlist Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager he pardoned, as a campaign advisor later this year, according to 4 people familiar with the talks. And I think the founding fathers, mostly when they were framing out the Constitution, kind of envisioned if you get in a situation where your campaign manager gets in federal legal trouble, such that you're forced to pardon them, and then but you're a clean guy, I guess, yourself, and you're going to run again because they didn't envision you being the dirty guy and running again. But even if you did, you would be too embarrassed to use the campaign manager who was convicted in federal court and then whom you pardoned in your second campaign, or third campaign for that matter. And I don't think that they saw this one coming. The job discussions have largely centered around the 2024 Republican convention in Milwaukee in July. And remember that Manafort was really kind of only brought on and kept on as a convention manager in 2016. And you'll recall that the one and only platform change that the Republican nominee in 2016 actually made to the Republican platform at the time was to remove the language about supporting Ukraine against Russia. It was like Republican Party policy and orthodoxy up until that point. And then all of a sudden, they stood it on its head and were the pro-Russia party. And now, years later, it's pervasive in the party. How did it happen? Paul Manafort was the campaign manager, or the convention manager. Who's going to be? But then he was convicted, right? Of bribery charges and espionage charges and foreign agency charges. And now he's pardoned and going to come back and do it again. No big deal, right? Okay. So the job discussions have largely centered around the 2024 Republican convention in Milwaukee in July, and could include Manafort playing a role in fundraising. That's not dangerous. For the presumptive GOP nominee's campaign, according to these people. Who are these people? Well, these are the ones who spoke on condition of anonymity, so you won't know. Who are these people? Never mind. Okay, I won't tell you. I can't. All right. While no formal decisions have been made, the 4 people described the hiring as expected and said Trump was determined to bring Manafort back into the fold. He was always there. Manafort worked for Trump in 2016 before being ousted and later convicted of tax and bank fraud felonies as part of Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. So he was in the fold, then he was convicted of tax and bank fraud felonies, and then Trump decided, you know what, that's a guy who belongs in the fold because I love tax and bank fraud felonies. He served time in prison, he did, before receiving a pardon in the final days of Trump's time in office. A Trump campaign spokeswoman did not respond to a request for comment. Manafort also did not respond to a request for comment. The hiring of Manafort would likely revive discussion, that's an interesting way of putting it, of Russia's involvement in the 2016 election, which Mueller concluded was sweeping and systemic. Mueller also found that Manafort shared internal Trump campaign polling data with a longtime associate who the FBI assessed had ties to Russian intelligence. A bipartisan Senate committee that investigated Russian interference in the 2016 election concluded that Manafort's receptivity to Russian outreach was, quote, a grave counterintelligence threat, unquote, that had made the 2016 campaign susceptible to, quote, malign Russian influence. Trump has told advisors that he feels loyal to Manafort because he served prison time. And, well, he served prison time because he wouldn't flip and give him Trump. I should point that out. And Manafort has continued to stay loyal and praise Trump in public and private appearances. The former president still often complains about the Mueller investigation, people close to Trump say, and contends that the prosecution of Manafort was unfair, though he contends that the prosecution of anyone he likes is unfair. Manafort was the Trump campaign chairman during the summer of 2016 before he was ousted in late August, once the convention was over with. He is a longtime Republican fixer, lawyer, and lobbyist who has lobbied for foreign leaders and dictators, and that was one of the problems. He didn't say so. He was ousted from the campaign, the Washington Post reported at the time, after Trump, quote, blew a gasket, unquote, when learning that Manafort's firm had not properly disclosed its foreign lobbying. Manafort was found guilty of hiding millions he made, lobbying on behalf of pro-Russian Ukrainian politicians in overseas bank accounts, then falsifying his finances to get loans when his patrons lost power. He was originally sentenced to about 4 years in prison, but was released early to home confinement due to the coronavirus before he was pardoned by Trump. During the 2016 campaign, Manafort also allegedly shared Trump campaign polling data with Konstantin Kilimnik, a Russian who the U.S. government said had ties to Russian intelligence. The special counsel accused Manafort of lying to the FBI about his interactions with Kilimnik, even after Manafort had said he would cooperate and provide truthful information. What? He didn't? Manafort also allegedly worked with Kilimnik to spread Russian disinformation. What was the disinformation he was spreading? Well, the disinformation was that, it's actually Ukraine who is interfering in the 2016 elections. So, how do you like that? Once again, all Republican accusations are, in fact, confessions, even when the activity is being done by Russians. So anyway, in a report issued in 2020, the Senate bipartisan committee that investigated Russian interference found that Manafort's presence on the campaign and proximity to Trump created opportunities for Russian intelligence services to exert influence over and acquire confidential information on the Trump campaign. Before joining Trump's orbit, he owned multiple properties in Manhattan and Palm Beach, drove luxurious cars, and spent millions on fancy clothes and rugs. But Mueller found that he had no meaningful income when he agreed to work for Trump for no salary in 2016, and instead intended, at the time even, to find ways to monetize his newly prominent role in the presidential campaign, including with former clients in Ukraine. In other words, he went into it knowing that he was going to have to monetize this work by selling secrets to someone. He wasn't being paid by the campaign. So how is he going to make some money? He's going to have to spill secrets about something to someone who wants to buy stuff, inside information of some kind from the Trump campaign. And the answer was Russian oligarchs. Manafort's national political career was launched in 1975 when he was named Associate Director for Personnel for President Gerald Ford. He worked closely with Ford campaign chief James Baker, a man he considered an early mentor. His reputation rose in 1976 when he helped Ford win the Republican nomination during a contested convention. He worked later as a convention advisor to the presidential campaign of Ronald Reagan and led convention operations in 1996 for GOP presidential nominee Robert Dole. So you can see why he had the resume to be hired by Trump for the same job. Trump has vacillated on his views of Manafort over the years. Wow, I can't believe that's the case. In 2018, he gave tepid remarks on behalf of his former campaign chairman. You know, Paul Manafort worked for me for a very short period of time, Trump said. He worked for Ronald Reagan. He worked for Bob Dole. He worked for John McCain, or his firm did. He's worked for many other Republicans. He worked for me for what, 49 days or something? A very short period of time. But when he pardoned Manafort, he attacked the Mueller investigation. Manafort has since written a book called Political Prisoner and defended Trump, attacking the Justice Department and other Trump critics. So, an interesting conclusion, to say the least. But, yeah, so, again, reminder that he joined the 2016 campaign. How? By promising Trump it won't cost you anything. I've managed conventions for all the big names. I can manage a convention for you, and you don't even have to pay me. And Trump said, price is right. I'll take it. Sure. He may or may not have asked, well, how are you going to make money? I know. I mean, like, well, I don't know. Does Trump have any concerns about other people making money? I'm sure that's one of the questions. How are you going to do this? How are you going to make money? Maybe he knew not to ask the question out loud because he knew what the answer was. I'm not sure. But anyway, it was clear from the beginning that Manafort was going to try to monetize this deal. Now, the big difference, of course, is that this time, whereas last time Manafort had the ability to give Russian intelligence officials information about polling, now Manafort will also have intimate access to a guy who's holding stolen nuclear secrets and documents in his house, maybe copies that weren't seized, maybe stuff that's never been found before, what have you, or stuff he just retained even in the face of the search of the Pervolago sex dungeon in 2022. No one really knows. Okay, well, let's see. How come my music isn't playing here? That's not such good news. Is there something paused, and why that won't play, I have no idea. Okay. There we go. All right. Late enough, but I don't know. Well, major malfunction. At any rate, we'll leave during a weird portion of the music. That'll make for some editing fun, but we'll duck out and back in at the right times, unlike Friday, I think. All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, coming back at a weird time in the music because it was delayed in deploying. I think on Friday, possibly Thursday, I think I ended up using the 1 minute break for the first 2 minute break in the show, and I was really confused. I think it only dawned on me when I got to the second break, and I said, didn't I just... I think I just hit this button before, and we ended up having a 1 minute break, so I imagine that on the live stream, it sounded like we were just coming back in the middle of a conversation, but that's not unusual for this show. I think that happens all the time. Okay, well, at any rate, there was bound to be some technical difficulties on a day like today. Everything's just a little muddled. So, I had mentioned that this article came to my attention because Marcy had grabbed it, and I don't think I understood exactly what it was she was driving at the time, but now I'd like to kind of go back to that. Does she add to this thread, or she just, she just says, well, here's how Josh Dawsey, in a report that Trump will hire Paul Manafort again, describes a meeting at which Manafort talked about how to get paid millions, how to carve up Ukraine, and how he planned to win these various states. And I guess she's saying that it just seems kind of like a cold, bare bones description of a fairly serious crime, and a fairly serious crime scene at that. And she then goes on to provide some other context about this. Let's see, what else did she say this morning? Because she offered up another take on things, and then how she had described it at some point in the past, and then I think she's offered up something new about this, but I'll have to sort of scroll back and take a look. All right, so here's what else she had to say about that. Okay, after following up that post, she says, and since Paul Manafort is in the news, here's my post from last summer showing how Paul Manafort did what Republicans claim but have never found any proof that Hunter Biden did. Another example, of course, of how all Republican accusations are in fact confessions. That is linked to a piece from June of last year entitled Paul Manafort Remains a Bigger Scandal Than Hunter Biden. And without reading you the nitty-gritty details of her piece there, she illustrates it with a chart of Manafort alongside Hunter Biden, and then the various accusations that they've made against Hunter Biden and whether or not he really did them and whether or not, as it turns out, Paul Manafort in fact did those things. For example, were there millions of dollars in tax avoidance? Well, it was Hunter Biden was accused of having avoided taxation on $3 million, and at that point it was to be determined how he might be held accountable for that. But Manafort, you may recall, or maybe you don't, and that's why this chart is helpful, was accused of and convicted of $15 million. $15 million. 5 times more tax avoidance than Hunter Biden. But a pardon, and everybody's forgetting about it, and he's going to be hired again, and it's going to be like, oh yeah, that guy. What did he do wrong again? I remember his name. Was there a weapons possessions charge? Yes, for Hunter Biden, and no for Paul Manafort. That's the one place where Manafort has a leg up on Hunter Biden. What about, though, a FARA component? That is a Foreign Agents Registration Act. Did Hunter Biden lobby on behalf of foreign governments and fail to notify the United States government? The answer in the end there is no. The answer, of course, for Paul Manafort was yes, and you got sentenced to federal prison for it. Was there money laundering in the Hunter Biden case? Well, no. Not money laundering, no. Was there money laundering for Paul Manafort? Yes, some $6.5 million worth. Was there bank fraud? Yes, over $22 million in bank fraud by Paul Manafort. None alleged, as it happens, or none proven, certainly, against Hunter Biden. Conspiracy with a foreign spy? They say yes, but when proof was required and push came to shove. Any convictions for Hunter Biden? No. Any smoking guns that look like the Lendon conviction? No. Any conviction for Paul Manafort? Yes. Was there a joint defense agreement signed with the president? Is Hunter Biden's lawyer Joe Biden's lawyer, and he's pleading the case for both of them? No. With Manafort and Trump? Yes. Did he lie to protect the president? No, says Hunter Biden, because he didn't. Yes, says Paul Manafort, because it doesn't matter because he's been pardoned for it. You get the idea, right? Was there intervention in the end from the Attorney General? Well, it's harder to tell. TBD is how she puts it in 2023 for both of them. But you can see pretty clearly there's a pretty significant difference between the way the cases were approached and the way the cases were treated. And yet, Republicans insist that the biggest scandal in the world is Hunter Biden, as Paul Manafort is poised to come back and run the campaign. So let's see. What other things did she have to say about all of this? Note that the Washington Post cared so little for fact-checking in their Paul Manafort story that Josh Dawsey, and now she's being really critical, added 60 months and 13 and somehow got 48. I'm not even certain what must have gotten the math wrong on this. Must have confused plus for minus on his big old calculator. What are we talking about here? Let's see. She's got a sentencing report on Manafort. Let's see. Sentencing held on March 13th, 2019, almost, 5 years ago. As to Paul Manafort, let's see, sentenced to 60 months incarceration to run concurrent to 30 months in the sentence previously imposed by the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. This is now a D.C. court that's sentencing him again. Count 2, he was sentenced to 13 months of incarceration to be served consecutively to the sentence on count 1. All right. Very interesting. And then what's the other clip that she's got here? That Manafort, as Dawsey reported, was found guilty and sentenced to about 4 years in prison, which is 12, 24, 48 months. So he was sentenced to considerably more than that. And I don't know. That is kind of odd. Well, that could be it's a mathematical error, and I wish they weren't making them, but not the worst thing in the world. Then she says, I wish journalists, when they ask Trump about, this is interesting. Okay, she's switching topics here, but it followed up. But it's worth noting in the wake of the bloodbath and mass deportation comments, I wish journalists, when they ask Trump about deporting immigrants, would ask whether Barron, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric have to go too, as the children of immigrants. That is a good question. Then she jumps back to the current topic with a new piece in which, where's this one? She's titled, How Josh Dawsey Downplays Paul Manafort's Ties to Alleged Russian Spies. And I'm a little wary of jumping in because it's usual empty wheel fare. But it's funny because in passing, I mean, I'm so used to the low standards of national media at this point that I thought Josh Dawsey was like, well, he really did recount some of the worst things that he did there. But not in language strong enough for Marcy Wheeler, so I'd like to find out what she would have preferred. Josh Dawsey's report that Trump plans to hire convicted money launderer and former business partner of an alleged Russian spy, Paul Manafort, to work on his campaign, possibly to help with fundraising, makes all the years of, we'll say, crappy coverage of the Russian investigation an urgent problem again. I think she's quoting from Dawsey's piece here, the part which read, the job discussions have largely centered around the Republican convention, et cetera, right? Dawsey gets big and little things wrong in his report, just so you know. For example, he claims that Manafort was sentenced to around 4 years in prison, after which he was released under COVID protocols. You remember how that was reported. In reality, Judge Amy Berman Jackson sentenced Manafort to 73 months. That would be 60 months concurrent with his Virginia sentence and 13 months consecutive to that. His release to home confinement did not adhere to the priorities for release at the time. So, in other words, he got preferential treatment not only in the sentencing, but in his release as well. So what was it? 73 months plus another 13. Is that right? 86 months divided by 12 is just over 7 years. So he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, not 4. And then he got released early, even for 4. And, well, as she says, his release to home confinement did not adhere to the priorities for release at that time. Predictably, though, it is in downplaying the import of Manafort's ties to Russian spies where Dawsey really fails. And I failed to remember that Marcy loves to use the word import instead of importance. I don't know. Well, anyway, let's see how this works. She quotes from Dawsey's really failing article, apparently, the part we just read. During the 2016 campaign, Manafort also allegedly shared Trump campaign polling data with Konstantin Kilimnik. The special counsel accused Manafort of lying to the FBI about that. Even after Manafort had said he would cooperate and provide truthful information, Manafort allegedly worked with Kilimnik to spread Russian disinformation. And in the Senate bipartisan committee report on the situation, they found that Manafort's presence on the campaign and proximity to Trump created opportunities for Russian intel services to exert influence over and acquire confidential information on the Trump campaign. And now they can get it on the American government direct, of course. Now, Marcy resumes. First, there is absolutely no dispute that Manafort sent campaign data to Kilimnik to share with his Ukrainian backers and Oleg Deripaska. Manafort simply maintained that he only instructed Rick Gates to share public data. Kilimnik's other business partner, Sam Patton, said Manafort shared internal data. But the polling data has never been the key point. The key point was, weeks before the Russians started stealing Hillary's internal modeling, Manafort told Kilimnik how he planned to win the race in swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and also Minnesota, where Trump ultimately did win it. Dawsey, of course, is silent about the other two undisputed aspects of the August 2nd, 2016 meeting. Kilimnik pitched Manafort on a plan to carve up Ukraine. Manafort ultimately admitted that Kilimnik did. He just claimed he didn't buy into the plan at that point. And Manafort talked about how to get paid by his Ukrainian backers and got his debt with Oleg Deripaska relieved, neither of which, I guess, made Dawsey's recounting of the situation. That is, the meeting at least maps out the outline of a quid pro quo. Everybody knows that deserves dramatic music whenever you use that. The commitment to carve up Ukraine in exchange for millions of dollars and help winning the election. The ultimate corrupt bargain, of course. Just sitting out there, but not getting mentioned. And Robert Mueller didn't just accuse Manafort of lying during the period when he was supposed to be cooperating. Judge Amy Berman Jackson ruled that he had. So a court of competent jurisdiction found that that was the case. And yet, it didn't get mentioned straightforwardly, just that there were accusations of Manafort lying when he was supposed to be cooperating. Paul Manafort lied to cover up what really happened between him and Konstantin Kilimnik, and Donald Trump pardoned Manafort to reward those lies. Finally, it's not that, quote, the U.S. government said Kilimnik had ties to Russian intelligence, as Dawsey put it. In 2021, after Kilimnik allegedly interfered in a second U.S. election, Treasury Department stated as fact that Kilimnik was Russian intelligence. Konstantin Kilimnik is a Russian and Ukrainian political consultant and known Russian intelligence services agent, implementing influence operations on their behalf. This is a Treasury report. During the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign, Kilimnik provided the Russian intelligence services with sensitive information on polling and campaign strategy. Additionally, Kilimnik sought to promote the narrative that Ukraine, not Russia, had interfered in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Frame them for it. Do it yourself, but frame the Ukrainians, because why not? You're in the middle of invading them. In 2018, Kilimnik was indicted on charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct justice regarding unregistered lobbying work. Kilimnik has also sought to assist designated former president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. At Yanukovych's direction, Kilimnik sought to institute a plan that would return Yanukovych to power in Ukraine. Kilimnik was designated pursuant to Executive Order 13848 for having engaged in foreign interference in the U.S. 2020 presidential election. Kilimnik was also designated pursuant to Executive Order 13660 for acting for or on behalf of Yanukovych. He was, in fact, on behalf of Yanukovych, right? Yanukovych, who is currently hiding in exile in Russia, was designated in 2014 pursuant to that executive order, 13660, for his role in violating Ukrainian sovereignty. We also know, Marcy tells us, from the Charles McGonigal sentencing materials that by 2017, the intelligence community had judged Oleg Deripaska to be associated with Russian intelligence agencies too. Among other things, a quote reads here, in May 2017, McGonigal received a then classified email stating that Deripaska was associated with a Russian intelligence agency and possibly involved in that agency's coup attempt in another country. They love staging coups. By context, it says, okay, the agency must be GRU, and the attempted coup must be Montenegro, a country implicated in McGonigal's other prosecution. Does everybody remember McGonigal? I don't, but, she does. That's the important part. One where Manafort had extensive history with Deripaska, and one mentioned in Andrew Weissman's Team M report. Donald Trump is considering hiring the former business partner of 2 alleged Russian spies and admitted money launderer Paul Manafort to help with fundraising. Okay. Way back in 2021, Avril Haines committed to declassifying parts of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report that remained then and still remain redacted. It's time to unseal those details describing why the spooks were so convinced that Kalimnik was himself a Russian spy. Well, it's a little difficult to follow, but I'm with you on that one. Sure, let's have that information. It does, present some question, right? Not only the interesting thing that the free campaign help who's paid by Russian spies wants to come back, having been pardoned, but that the money laundering guy is going to be in charge of the fundraising. From where? From Russia. Why? How are they going to be able to do that? With some laundering. Does he have experience doing that and keeping it a secret? No. But experience doing it? Yes. Yeah. That's kind of, that'll be kind of interesting, don't you think? Speaking of the raid at Mar-a-Lago and the documents that were found to be in Trump's possession, plus other documents that may not have been found or were at properties not searched by the FBI. We were talking about that sort of weird thing about the FBI not having actually searched all of his properties when they have every reason to believe that there are more documents hidden elsewhere. I thought this was an interesting report to share from Bloomberg. It's a current report from Jason Leopold, whose name we've called from time to time in the past on the show, now at Bloomberg, with this very interesting report about FBI culture in general. I mean, we heard these rumors during the 2016 campaign and going forward that there were at least some field offices that were like Trumper through and through. And, that may have helped motivate the director's insistence on interfering essentially in the campaign himself in announcing the re-examination of possible charges against Hillary Clinton in the closing days of the 2016 campaign. But it went much further than that the New York field office in particular was rumored to be rife with Trump supporters. So this is a good follow-up on that. This is a piece in Bloomberg, once again, titled After Mar-a-Lago Search. It's actually titled Mar-a-Lago Search. After Mar-a-Lago Search, FBI agent wondered, am I dreaming? Now, that could go either way. What do you mean? Are we finally going to crack down on this lunatic that's running the country into the ground? No. Am I dreaming? Oh, how dare you violate the sovereignty of the great Donald Trump is basically what's going on here. New Freedom of Information Act documents reveal raw hostility inside the FBI after the Trump search. This is really kind of fascinating. It's illustrated, of course, it's illustrated, by the way, with a picture of the boxes, the infamous boxes stacked up in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Anyway, this is a March 15th piece from just the other day. With the 2024 campaign heating up, it may seem like ages since FBI agents descended on Donald Trump's Palm Beach residence and dungeon to search dozens of boxes of highly classified records. If the photographs of top-secret documents stashed beside the former president's toilet were erased from your memory, get ready to have them seared into your consciousness again. The criminal trial over Trump's mishandling of the documents could start as soon as this summer. But keep in mind that they may also say, well, having that now would interfere with the election. I think, the people should get some view of whether or not the guy they're supposed to vote for president was, in fact, stealing classified documents and maybe selling them to the Russians, say. But some people think that would be interference in the election to do that now. Anyway, as news of the Mar-a-Lago raid unfolded on the morning of August 8th, 2022, it unsurprisingly drew fierce reaction from Trump, his biggest backers, that's unsurprising as well, and many Republican members of Congress. But a cache of documents that I recently obtained from the FBI shows just how much the historic event roiled some of the Bureau's rank and file, forcing FBI Director Christopher Wray to engage in damage control. And remember, not that many people really trust Christopher Wray from either party, quite honestly, but he's your guy playing the champion of law and order in this, even though he's a Trump appointee. I mean, I'm glad that he's doing everything he is doing, but I don't know how far we trust him for this stuff. But anyway, wait till you hear some of this stuff. Did this really just happen? Am I dreaming? The FBI served a search warrant on a former president? That's what the FBI agents were saying to one another at the time. This was written by an incredulous Bureau employee in an email that was sent to the FBI's acting ombudsman, whose name was, all right, hold on a second, Chaunceret Morey, Morey. But Chaunceret, do you want me to even try to spell it for that? No, you can figure that one out. This was all done shortly after the Mar-a-Lago search. And then what else did this person write? I don't know, it was an FBI agent or an employee of the FBI writing, did this really just happen? Am I dreaming? The FBI served a search warrant on a former president. Now let's get this part. This is inside the FBI. If he took documents, give him a call and ask for them back. Like, seriously? This is the person's comment. This isn't me saying, like, seriously to this person, which I should be saying. My own agency? A bunch of Democrat political hacks up top. Like Christopher Wray, sure. I've lost just about all faith in our leadership, says this complainer inside the FBI. Seriously, give them a call and ask for them back. Of course, they had been calling him and asking for them back for a long time. And his response was such that they eventually had to go and get a subpoena for those documents. And then no compliance with the subpoena. This was a process of over a year trying to get him to return these things. And nothing doing. Now, why don't people inside the FBI know this? Well, not everybody needs to know this information. But I don't know whether they even bothered providing them with an answer. There's a copy, a screen grab of the copy of this redacted letter to the ombudsman's office to establish the fact that it was actually there. But you got the gist of it. The email was buried in a stack of documents totaling a few hundred pages that I, Jason Leopold, recently received in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. I asked the FBI, and this is his specialty, really. He loves making Freedom of Information Act requests, and he turns up good stuff almost every time. Everything that makes it to print is good stuff. I mean, maybe he's only batting 250 in terms of turning up good stuff, but the ones that generate articles are good. Anyway, I asked the FBI to turn over records about any internal protests pertaining to the search. I mean, it's a good call, right? We heard that there was rife Trumpism within the ranks, but he thought to convert this into action and make a FOIA request for, give me any documents, like any emails between agents or different parts of the Bureau or what have you, where people were protesting this search. Good thought. So he asked for any internal protests pertaining to the search and any threats against personnel for undertaking it. The FBI said it would take years for them to conduct a search and hand over any responsive documents. But a lawsuit that Bloomberg News and I, Jason Leopold, filed last year sped up the process. Under FOIA, he notes, a requester can sue an agency in U.S. District Court after 20 working days if the agency doesn't respond within that time frame. Well, they didn't, so they sued. A handful of records came from the FBI's little-known Office of the Ombudsman, the division within the Bureau where employees can confidentially raise concerns. How interesting. That partially explains why the FBI cited a privacy exemption under the FOIA Act to justify redacting the email sender's name. So, okay, that makes some sense. Good explanation. Still, the document showed that Maury forwarded the email to Paul Abate, the FBI's deputy director. Just wanted you to be aware of the concerns/comments our office has received regarding the search of former President Trump, Maury wrote. And wait till you hear what some of those reactions were. Well, you'll have to wait. So I don't know what I'm asking you to do. But hang on, we'll be right back.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with this read through the Bloomberg piece from Jason Leopold, who uncovered all of this, these internal documents, internal emails in the FBI protesting against the execution of the search warrant of Mar-a-Lago, which is, I mean, I guess they must have enough complaints happening about things like that or other things that they have this Office of the Ombudsman at all. So, and I guess it's just good for transparency in general that if there's a place, that there be a place to go if you think there's something wrong or corrupt about what the Bureau is doing. Although sometimes it turns up the fact that you're going to have a fair number of totally delusional FBI agents in the agency. That's really kind of amazing. So here we are. This is the Ombudsman's office forwarding things to Deputy Director Paul Abate. Just wanted you to be aware of the concerns and comments that our office has received regarding the search of former President Trump. Another FBI employee was even harsher, characterizing the Bureau as a, quote, banana republic and an embarrassment, and demanding answers to a series of questions. I don't know if the questions are listed here, but let's take a look. Well, I mean, are they very often? Here's another screen grab of the email itself, and I don't know whether this document goes into discussion of what the questions are. So I thought maybe I would enlarge this thing and take a look. The name of the sender is redacted, but this is, again, Chaunceynet Maury forwarding this to Deputy Director Paul Abate and someone else, but that name is redacted. Here's the latest. So, the email to the Ombudsman's office. Hello, Chaunceynet, sorry. See the start of the result below from the politicizing and absolute embarrassment of the recently formed Banana Republic BU, like I think that's their shorthand for bureau. People are threatening us more than usual, the FBI employees, due to the actions of a few. Here we go again. I can't wait to see what training we will all have to do. And then the questions. 1, what is the predication of the investigation involving the search? It better be more than putting a few documents in the archives or classified material of which the man could have declassed. It's not even a very well-written complaint letter. But, of course, it was hundreds of documents still classified and including secrets about nuclear capabilities about the United States and allies. But I guess they didn't know that then. And then secondly, what is the PC, probable cause of the warrant? It better not involve any type of political opposition. 3, provided 1 and 2 are legit, why didn't someone work with one of the former POTUS's delegates to resolve the problem? Well, they did. I doubt it was the least intrusive method, and they probably wanted the publicity. The 7th floor, top leadership, needs to lead and provide faith back in our organization if it's even possible. Now, in hindsight, you look like a total a-hole, but, probably because, well, they don't just tell everybody in the FBI how everything works and what probable cause backed every single warrant. There's a need to know, and you don't need to know it, so whatever. But okay, so you ask questions. It's just interesting how indignant they are about it. And, it's all based on conspiracy theory nonsense, but they actually, I guess, expect the Ombudsman's office to respond to them and tell them, well, what was the probable cause behind the warrant? Well, I don't know whether they ever did. Or, you ask the question, why didn't they just contact the former president and ask him for it back? This is the first they're hearing of these things. And, while that's, I'm sure, puzzling to them, it's interesting that it didn't occur to them that, well, a warrant like this would require ordinarily some extraordinary measures to have been taken beforehand and for them to have failed. And there's no reason in the world to believe that rank and file FBI agents throughout the Bureau would be informed of every step of this stuff. But here these guys are like, well, I'm from the FBI, goddammit. How come I don't know everything? Well, maybe you don't really understand your job all that well. Anyway, next up, this section called Raw Hostility, and you'll see why. Taken as a whole, the FBI documents reveal the most detailed view yet of the raw hostility erupting inside an agency that has been in a state of near constant turmoil ever since June 2015, when Trump rode a golden escalator down to the lobby of the tower that bears his name to announce the start of his presidential campaign, at which point apparently the FBI went bananas. Under then FBI Director James Comey, the Bureau played a major role in the most hotly contested election in history. It looked into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server and opened an investigation codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, the counterintelligence probe into ties between Trump's 2016 presidential election and Russia. Trump has been at war with the FBI ever since. A special counsel appointed by former Attorney General William Barr concluded in a report last year that the FBI relied on raw, unverified intelligence and shouldn't have launched the probe. Rumors have long swirled that FBI agents at various field offices had been sympathetic to Trump even as the Bureau launched investigations into his campaign and business dealings. So, by the way, while you ponder how it is that, even though it's easily explained by being appointed by William Barr, how do you get to the conclusion that the FBI relied on raw, unverified intelligence and shouldn't have launched the probe of Trump's connections to Russia? Well, for one thing, you should fill your bureau with people who are angry Trump supporters. That would probably give you the results you want, and would also explain getting letters at the office of the ombudsman with people crying about how unfair it was for them to search the president's residence, even though it's weird. We came back with like nuclear secrets and stuff, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of it, even after he said he gave us everything. It's very odd. Well, anyway, rumors have long swirled that FBI agents at various field offices had been sympathetic to Trump, even as the Bureau launched investigations into his campaign and his business dealings. The claims were always attributed to anonymous sources. An email I obtained last year after a separate FOIA lawsuit related to the January 6th Capitol riots backs up those assertions. It's interesting that you even got to the same conclusion by pursuing FOIA requests about something completely different, a totally different crime against the Constitution and the United States committed by Trump. There's no good way to say it, read the email to Deputy Director Abate, so I'll just be direct. From my firsthand and secondhand information from conversations since January 6th, there is, at best, a sizable percentage of the employee population that felt sympathetic to the group that stormed the Capitol and said it was no different than Black Lives Matter protests of last summer. This person wrote a week after the riots. The FBI agent went on to summarize his view of the climate at FBI offices based on his conversations with his colleagues. Agents, especially those who work counterterrorism cases, he said, sympathized with the insurrectionists' frustration. Oh, they're so frustrated. And chalked it up to everyone having been quarantined at home for months, which didn't happen. I mean, there was time, but this whole idea of people being quarantined for months, there were months when people worked remotely, yes. There were months during which you were asked to quarantine yourself if you were infected with coronavirus, yes, but there was no period at which everyone was locked in their apartments for months on end. No. So I don't really need to hear that nonsense. But here, FBI agents are running around believing this stuff and saying, well, what do you expect? That thing that didn't happen is what made those people do that thing that there's no excuse for. Okay, sure. Well, anyway, so this is an interesting way. Just reading into the minds of FBI agents. FBI agents were writing to one another and to the ombudsman saying, I sympathize with the insurrectionists' frustrations. I chalk it up to everyone having been quarantined at home for months due to COVID and then losing their jobs and fake news, for example. Fake news. Just, I don't know, whatever that means. Just fake news. That's what did it. Is an FBI employee. A senior analyst from my first unit who retired less than 2 years ago has a Facebook page full of hashtag Stop the Steal content. These are not one-off events. They are representative of a larger group within the FBI, the agent wrote. And there's a more extensive recitation in this document here in the screenshot. Whatever your personal feelings about the FBI, the one thing the documents make clear, the politicization of the Bureau is dangerous for the people who work there. The cache of records the FBI turned over includes hundreds of pages of emails, text messages, spreadsheets, and internal memos documenting a series, this is a quote, a series of violent threats, unquote, to FBI property, personnel, and their families after the Mar-a-Lago search. People are threatening us more than usual due to the actions of a few. This is how these agents are reacting to this. Not, this is terrible, we're just trying to uphold law and order here, and people are angry with us. Trump supporters are threatening us. They're nuts. These are FBI agents saying the reason people are threatening us, they're right to threaten us. We're doing crazy stuff like searching the former president's homes, the actions of a few, the leadership who demanded that we execute this search warrant. They're the ones who are causing us these problems of being threatened. That's the internal view inside the FBI. That's crazy. The documents mention one threat that received widespread media attention, a Navy veteran armed with an AR-15 who said on social media days after the Mar-a-Lago search that federal agents should be killed on sight. He died in a shootout with a state trooper in Ohio after he tried to breach the FBI's Cincinnati field office. Citing exemptions for privacy and protecting law enforcement techniques and procedures, the Bureau redacted the nature of the threats, data related to the number of threats, and the status of investigations into them. The records do show that the FBI's National Threat Operations Center collected them from a tip line and social media. Next up, internal revolt. The documents make clear that the FBI's Ray was trying to stave off an internal revolt. One email referred to the statement Ray released after the search of Mar-a-Lago, but that too angered another FBI employee who emailed Maury and laid into FBI leadership. And it's here. It's interesting, to say the least. Here's the text of that email that was forwarded by the Ombudsman's office. The director just sent a nice message out, but all it really says is trust us. I appreciate him sending it, but the problem here, the problem is that there are some bad eggs in here. I don't believe we brought them all to the surface, or we wouldn't be wasting time on nonviolent misdemeanor offenders that simply took a stroll through the Capitol. Wow. People hide behind need to know, which is how the bad eggs get away with things for so long to begin with. We need more transparency with something as monumental and historical as a search warrant on the former president who's about to announce another run for office. I know he wasn't around for the Comey days, but most of us remember the dirt. Further, the director has a boss, or so it seems, who requested the FBI, such as myself, go after some parents at school board meetings because they politically weren't in line with the AG, which according to the AG makes them literal terrorists. Of course, these were people showing up at school board meetings saying, we will murder all of the school board unless they do things the way we want them to do them. Well, that does make you a terrorist. The director just needs to look around at why his line troops are ticked off with everything. He doesn't even, well, he misspelled, he doesn't event. But he doesn't even stand up to such politicized, ridiculous rhetoric from DOJ. Sometimes we don't know who calls the shots around here. Remember Andrew McCabe? This isn't as cut and dry as we have good men and women taking gangs and drugs off the street. This actually affects the stability of our democracy. Trust us is no longer sufficient based on facts and very recent history. Send answers, please. Oops, it looks like our parent-hating AG is going to get records released. And then the rest of the signature part, of course, redacted from this, or not included in the forwarded email. This is actual like FBI agents writing these cuckoo bird conspiracy drenched emails. The other one that I didn't read all the way through. There's some additional stuff was, some of it was quoted before, but I thought I would throw in a couple of the pieces that didn't get quoted in the body of the story here. Here's a sampling, I guess, the ombudsman is telling the deputy director of what's happening across multiple field offices. Here's one that says, I literally had to explain to an agent from a blue state office the difference between opportunists burning and looting during protests that stemmed from legitimate grievances about police brutality versus an insurgent mob whose purpose was to prevent the execution of a democratic process at the behest of a sitting president. One is a smattering of criminals. The other is an organized group of domestic terrorists. But apparently the FBI, agents on the line, don't recognize this. I was talking to an agent in a red state office who was telling me that over 70% of his squad and roughly 75% of the agent population in his office disagreed with the violence, quote, but could understand where the frustration was coming from, which led to the protesters getting carried away on January 6th. Great. An analyst in a purple state described watching horrified as the events were unfolding on the news, while several co-workers chalked up the insurgency as a response to everyone being quarantined at home for months and being more on edge because so many lost their jobs and lacked steady income because of COVID. Look how amazingly supportive of the social safety net the FBI suddenly has become. Anyway, after the TVs in that squad's space were tuned to... this is interesting. Oh, this is a pickup after a redaction, but they're basically noting the fact that the TVs in that squad space were all tuned to Newsmax, of all things. Can you imagine FBI agents are getting their news diet from Newsmax? Those TVs previously apparently were tuned to Fox News, which is bad enough. But post-election, the group found that Fox News was, quote, playing to the left and reporting fake news, like things like Trump lost the election. So the FBI agents turn on Newsmax. Oh, my God. I've spoken, it says here, to multiple African-American agents who have turned down asks to join SWAT because they do not trust that every member of their office's SWAT team would actually protect them in an armed conflict. How do you like that? African-American agents being asked to join SWAT, and they're like, I'm not going to join SWAT because I'm kind of a little afraid either that these guys won't back me up or that maybe they'll shoot me. This is not good. Not a great thing. But it is it's very important that Jason uncover these things. What an amazing ask this really was. I don't know. There's more to this letter, but I want to get back to what Jason concluded from having gotten all of this information. So, where did we leave off in reading his thing? A couple of weeks after the Mar-a-Lago search, the FBI documents reveal that the Bureau set up an interview with a Wall Street Journal reporter and the director, Ray, who addressed the threats to personnel and criticisms leveled against him. The Bureau was pleased with the outcome. This story worked out well, said Ray's chief of staff, Jonathan Lenzner, on August 20th, 2022, in an email to top FBI officials. It shows the director working hard to do the right thing, focusing on the work and the people. Ray may have brought some goodwill with Wall Street Journal readers, but he still can't shake some of his critics, including his loudest one. Trump has already called for Congress to defund the FBI and the Department of Justice, and suggested that if he's reelected, he would weaponize the Bureau to target his enemies. Now, there's a whole Republican House committee that was formed to investigate the bad things that happen when you weaponize the federal government, except they're all endorsing the candidate who says, I will overtly and as a plan weaponize the federal government to use against my political enemies. For some reason, that they're all willing to endorse. Now, another section here. What about Biden is the name of this section. I've also been tracking down documents linked to the classified files unearthed last year at President Joe Biden's think tank in Washington and his Delaware residence. Last month, a special prosecutor appointed to investigate the matter concluded in a 388-page report, Robert Hur, that no criminal charges against Biden were warranted, even though he had, quote, retained and disclosed classified documents after his vice presidency. So essentially, this is a section of FBI agents complaining, oh yeah, well, what about Biden? Why aren't we doing something about him, huh? Well, here's your answer. But before the Justice Department publicly released that special prosecutor's report, I requested documents from the National Archives and Records Administration about what went on behind the scenes after the Biden documents were found. Bloomberg and I then sued NARA when the agency failed to turn over records in the required time frame. The report by Special Prosecutor Robert Hur said the Biden probe, quote, collected over 7 million documents, including emails, text messages, photographs, videos, toll records, and other materials from both classified and unclassified sources. That's not the number of documents they found in his possession. It's the number of documents that they collected when they subpoenaed everybody's email who might have something to say about when, whether, why, how these documents came to be stored in these other locations. Some of the documents in that trove would have been responsive to my FOIA request, but they were either withheld or redacted under a FOIA exemption that authorizes federal agencies to withhold information compiled for law enforcement purposes. The exemption, B7A, allows withholding in those circumstances only if the document's release could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement proceedings, and now it won't, you see. One of the documents NARA turned over to me was redacted under that exemption at the behest of the FBI. It was a text message between NARA's chief operating officer and an agency official that referenced the number of boxes that NARA archivists retrieved from Biden's think tank. Okay. And there's a picture of it here with the redactions. The special prosecutor's report gives us clues about what was behind the redaction. It details that on November 8th, 2022, archivists collected a single box, part of a larger retrieval that included 3 others days before, from the Penn Biden Center, along with 28 boxes from the Federal Records Center. The boxes mainly held letters of condolences after the passing of Biden's son, Beau. Ooh, look out. One box contained a blank sheet, but a blank sheet bearing a classification mark. Somehow that blank page had been classified. In other words, it was probably one of those pages from a report. You know, this page intentionally left blank. It was once part of a classified report, and it got separated from it because it was blank. So a blank piece of paper that said classified on it. Now that the investigation into Biden's handling of classified documents is over, NARA has agreed to reprocess hundreds of pages of records previously withheld or redacted at the direction of the FBI under the B7A exemption, so it's possible that within just a few months we'll get a sliver of the primary source material that formed the basis of the special prosecutor's report. So nothing much new on the Biden front, even though basically the agents were asking, well, what about Biden? How come we're not prosecuting Biden, but we are prosecuting Trump? Well, the answer is the special counsel said, I just don't find anything that's worth prosecuting here. Well, what makes you say that? Well, we'll give you that information as it becomes available and becomes unredacted. But I don't really believe that you people will be patiently sitting on your hands waiting for this information to logically process it later on, given how conspiracy-addled you've been to this date. But, well, it's a concern. That's all I can tell you at this point. Let's see. Other things that we could add to the collection here. There are a number of things. We have only a few minutes at this point. So we'll throw this one in here. Always room for a little bit of Amanda Marcotte, a good thing to start the week with. And of course, no better way to spend the few minutes you have left than confirming your priors. And no better way to confirm your priors than to have Amanda Marcotte do it for you. Adult MAGA rage is making schools more dangerous for students. Despite the Ethan Crumbley and Nex Benedict cases, a GOP nominee to run schools wants a firing squad for liberals. I just, when I say confirms the priors, it's something that I was thinking about when we heard the news that Chaya Raichik had been appointed to a position in the Department of Education in Oklahoma, despite living in California, for one thing. But just once again, the idea that wherever she goes rhetorically, and wherever she turns her gaze, bomb threats to those schools follow. So to make kids safe in school, we brought in the nation's biggest bomb threat magnet and told her to wander the halls. Fantastic. But there's more to it. Last week, saw national headlines regarding 2 tragic stories that illustrate how MAGA radicalization of adults endangers kids in school. And remember, they're all about the safety of the kids. Sniff, sniff. First, a medical examiner reported that Nex Benedict, just an update on this story, a non-binary Oklahoma 10th grader who passed away recently after enduring a beating in a school bathroom, apparently, they say, died by suicide. Highly questionable, but there it is. Then James Crumbley, the father of Michigan school shooter Ethan Crumbley, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for providing his disturbed son with a gun. The boy's mother, Jennifer Crumbley, was convicted of the same crime in February. What links these stories is that they're both case studies in how the hatreds and obsessions of MAGA adults are trickling down into the lives of children and causing real harm and even death. The Crumbleys faced such unusual charges because they gave their son access to guns merely days before the 2021 shooting, despite knowing he was articulating violent fantasies. One could guess right-wing politics were a factor, but there's no need to speculate. In 2016, Jennifer Crumbley wrote a gushing open letter praising Donald Trump as a man of, quote, sincerity and humility, whom she trusted with my son's future. She claimed children of immigrants get free tutors, free tablets from our government, while her son supposedly gets nothing. Benedict, of course, died in the wake of a growing crescendo of right-wing hysterics demonizing LGBTQ students and teachers as groomers and accusing them of being a threat to other students. In Oklahoma, the far-right Republican state superintendent, Ryan Walters, has been especially aggressive on culture war issues, attacking LGBTQ people and calling for book bans. In an especially trollish move, Walters recently hired Haya Raichik, who runs the infamous Libs of TikTok Twitter account, to be on the state's library committee. Raichik's only experience in education is targeting LGBTQ teachers and allies with her account, knowing bomb threats and harassment usually follow. Benedict was beaten up in a girl's bathroom after being required by Oklahoma state law to use a restroom based on gender assigned at birth, not the one they live as. Well, there's considerably more to the article, of course, but it's making the point that we need to drive home. Well, yeah, the adult MAGA rage is making schools more dangerous, of course, disguising itself as making schools safe. Safe for certain kids to beat the crap out of and even kill other kids. That's real safe. Fantastic. Anyway, we got to cut things off here. It's time for us to go. Time to go rest the voice and time to turn things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. Here's what he's got on tap. Trump is freaked out about Fani Willis and has done so during his Ohio speech. I didn't even notice that part after losing his disqualification motion. Elsewhere, an open seat on the Ohio State Supreme Court could flip partisan control away from the MAGA GOP. That would be great.
NetrootsRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
There's more, of course. The GOP-controlled Kentucky House voted to defund diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at the state's public universities. One of several states doing that now. And Wisconsin voters will decide on 2 GOP-backed measures that would ban private money helping administer state elections. Stay tuned for all that and more next.